Hey students, welcome to class. This is Mrs. Brunk, and thanks for joining me for the last lesson of Module 3 and also the last lesson of Unit 1. And the title of the lesson is Corresponding Parts of Congruent Figures Are Congruent. Now that sounds like a mouthful, and a lot of times we'll abbreviate that as CPCFC. And it's just really kind of related to knowing if you've got some congruent figures like triangles or quadrilaterals or whatever, that all of their matching or corresponding parts will be congruent. So our learning goals are we will be able to identify congruent parts of figures, knowing that figures are congruent, and we're going to be able to find the measures of side lengths or angle measures using that property. So this is the corresponding parts of congruent figures theorem, and it says if two figures are congruent, so that's the condition that has to be met. If we're told they're congruent, remember congruent, the symbol looks like this, but it means the same thing as equal. But we use that symbol when we're talking about figures. And if that's the case, then all of the corresponding sides and corresponding angles will be congruent. Now, in other words, the ones that match up with each other. Now, first of all, we're going to take a look at what's called a congruent statement. And it's really important to know that the order of the letters of a congruent statement are critical. Okay, they tell you the order in which the corresponding angles and side lengths, how they match up in each figure, okay? So for instance, this is a congruent statement right here, and I can tell by looking at the order of vertices that, for instance, angle J would go with angle P. So here's angle J, here's angle P over here. You know those go together by the order. So that would mean that, say, M would go with S. So here's M, it would go with S. And then at the same time, we could say that segments, so for instance, if I take two letters at a time in order, so KL, for instance, would be congruent to QR. So like if I was marking these things, remember how we use the markings that we do? We say, okay, well, if I was saying that angle J was congruent to angle P, I'd mark it like that. Okay, if I was saying that angle M or K, put double marks, was congruent to then angle Q over here, right? Angle L, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going 3 would match up with angle R, and then we would have to use a fourth marking for the 2, 3, 4, and then that would go with angle S. So that's how we could mark it. And if I was marking sides, I could, for instance, say that side JK, which is up here, right here, goes with PQ. I could say that KL goes with QR, ML, goes with RSR, and JM would go with PS. Okay, so that's what we're doing here is we're just matching these up. We're just going to tell what things are congruent. So angle K, I can tell, is congruent to angle Q. Now I could have told that without even looking at the pictures because K is the second letter and Q is the second letter. L is going to go with angle R. M is the last letter listed, so it's going to go with angle S. Oops. Angle J is with angle P. Side KL, because again KL is the second and third letters, that would go with QR. LM would be the third and fourth, so then that would go with RS. Again, we're just looking, honestly, not even at the drawing. I could look at the drawing if it had one, but I really just need to look right here. LM would go with RS and so on. JM, which was the first and last letters, they're going to go with PS. And then JK is going to go with PQ, excuse me. And it's important to get them in the right order too. So since J and P go together, I put the P first. Okay? So when they ask you to list all of the congruent parts, remember that there's two triangles in this case. That means there's 3 pair of angles and 3 pair of sides. So I'm going to go ahead with the angles first. If I said angle J, angle K, and angle L, so that's going to cover all the ones in the first triangle. J is going to go with Q. K is going to go with R, and L is going to go with P. Now with sides, if I go up here and I go 2 at a time to name the sides, I could say JK, that side, is congruent to QR. So I did the first and second. Now if I go second and third, that's KL and RP. So KL is congruent to RP. And then to get that final segment, we'd have to go first and last. So I could call it JL or LJ, but then I have to be consistent on the other side. So since I called it LJ, I'm going to call it QP, and those are congruent. Okay? So that's how we work with a congruent statement. So I'm going to leave these as you try questions, and we'll test those out. So if you pause the video right now, give those a try, and then tune back in. In fact, you can go ahead and just do C. We'll skip D. And I just want you to match up the corresponding parts. So pause the video now. Okay, so thanks for giving that one a try. Just pay really close attention to the order of the vertices on the segments here, okay? Because, you know, for instance, when I named this side HI, I had to go in the same order over here and say LM. But say on the next one, notice that they kind of switched the order and they did G, or I guess HG on that last one. They went H first and then to G. So then you want to go L to K. Okay, so why we are learning how to match up vertices in order is so that we can now solve some problems involving congruent triangles and find some missing parts. So if we know which parts match up, we know which parts have to be the same measure. So taking a look at example 2, it says find the missing lengths or angle measures. So first of all, angle A, I know that angle A right here has to be the same as angle D. Notice in the statement it says D must go with A. So that means angle A must be 73 degrees. So those go together. And again, I could mark those as congruent as with the same markings, right? I know that angle C and angle F go together. So they're both 42 degrees because I see it listed on F. So that means C has to be the same. Angle B is over here, and it's matched up with E, so that's 65 degrees. And again, we can tell by looking at the triangles themselves if it's really obvious, but otherwise you can, look at the statement B and E go together, C and F go together. Side AC, okay, so side AC is this side right here, and if I match it up with its matching part over here, which is DF, I can see that that's 3.5 centimeters. I can tell that FE is, so FE is right here, right? And they want me to find FE. Well, if I go over here, that's the same as CB. So I know that that must be 3.7 centimeters. And then finally, the last two parts go together. So those two sides are congruent. And so DE is what they want me to find. Well, that's going to be the same as over here in AB, and that's 2.6 centimeters, okay? So I want you to take a second, pause the video, try B as a you try question, and then we'll go on and look at a little bit more difficult one. So pause the video now. All right, thanks for giving those a try. So take a moment and check out your answers. Notice, again, that we just were able to either look at the figure in this case, but really the congruent statement told me everything I need to know. That, angle S goes with angle V. Then when I looked at the drawing, I could tell the angle V was 38 degrees, and that's how they matched up, okay? So if you need to, pause the video now to check your answers, and we're going to move on to the next example after that. Okay, so in example 3, these are a little bit more complicated now because you can see we're throwing in some variables. So we're going to bring in some of our algebra. And so they want us to find the value of a couple of variables and then a couple of measurements within the figures. So first of all, if they want me to find x, I see down here it says to find x. Well, I see over here, this side has x labeled on it. And then I know that that's side AB. So side AB should go with DE. Well, if I look over here, DE, right, it also is labeled with X. And so what I know about those two sides is that I know that AB must be congruent to or equal DE. And so if I use substitution and just kind of plug in what the drawing says these are equal to, AB is 3x plus 8 and DE is 5x, I have a simple equation now that I can use to find out what x is. to find x, I want to get rid of the x on the left-hand side, so that leaves me with just 8. I have 2x over here. I know to undo multiplying, I divide, and that tells me that x must be 4, okay? Now I'm going to find out what y is. So using a different color, I'm going to highlight things that have y. So this angle is actually showing y in it, okay? And that's angle A. Well, angle A goes with angle D. So over here, oh look, angle D is over here. It also has an expression that involves y. And I know that those angles have to be equal. I know that angle A must be congruent to angle D. And so I could simply substitute in place of it what the drawing shows me those are equal to using variables. And now I could solve that equation to figure out what y is. So step 1, I'm going to subtract 5y from both sides, leaving me with just 11 over here, and then y plus 2. And now to find out what y is, I'm just going to subtract 2, leaving me with just 9 for y. Now, if I wanted to find out what the length of AB is now, I could just go ahead and take, find AB is right here, right? So I could take 4, substitute it in there, and that would tell me that AB must be 3 times 4 plus 8, which is 20. And again, they have units on there, so I'm going to include units there, 20 inches. Now, if I want to find angle E, so angle E is over here. Now, that's funny. They asked me to find angle E, but I'm pretty sure they wanted you to find angle D. So we're going to change that to, say, angle D. And that means I'm going to have to take this 9 and substitute it in here. And that'll be 6 times 9 plus 2. So that's 54 plus 2, or 56 degrees. Okay. We'll try one more, and we'll leave the last one for a you try question. So this time I've got GHJK is congruent to LMNP. So they're wanting me to find x and y again. So I'm going to go ahead and look and see what things have x on it. I see that this side right here has an x on it. It's 4x plus 3. And then I know that that side is GH. So I'm going to go look over here at LM, which is supposed to be the matching side. And there it is. That also has an expression with x on it. So I could just take and substitute in place of those, because I know that GH is congruent to LM, and then plugging in what the drawing says those are equal to using variables. And now again, I can solve those to find out what x is. So to start, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And then I'm going to add 13, which gives me 16 equals 2x, and then divide by 2. That means x must be 8. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my y. So my y's, let's see, I've got y, I've got, something with y. Oh, this angle right here has y on it. That's angle H. So see, I'm circling H, and then angle M will be the congruent angle to it, because those are the corresponding. So all I'm going to do is just say that these angles have to be equal by saying that they're, so say angle H is congruent to angle M. So all I have to do is substitute in place what those expressions are in the drawing. And now I can simply solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 9y from both sides, leaving me with just 17 here. 2y minus 1 here. I'm going to add 1, giving me 18 equals 2y, and now dividing by 2 tells me that y must be 9. And now I'm going to plug back in, and when I plug back in, I can find out what the length of LM. Let's see what they want me to find LM. So here's LM right here, and that involves x. So 6 times what x is, which was 8, minus 13. Let's see, that's 48 minus 13, which is 35. And then angle H is right here, and it needs to use y. So if I just simply take my expression 9 times what y is, well, we just found 9 was, or y was 9, plus 17. That makes 81 plus 17 for a total of 98 degrees. Okay. So I'm going to leave this one for a you try question. Give this one a try. And we're going to check this one in class. We're going to check in class our next period together. Okay? So this one you're going to try, and I'm going to check this in when I see you in class next time. So that does it for today's lesson. By the way, I do believe possibly you may have one more page in notes. If that's the case and that has not been removed from your notes, then we'll talk about this in our next class as well. So that's going to do it for today. Thanks for coming to class.